Good morning and welcome to the Sunday service. This morning we're going to meditate few minutes. After the meditation we have a Dhamma talk, then question and answer and chanting. So right now Subodha is going to lead the meditation.
All right, let's get into a comfortable position. Close our eyes. And take 3 long, deep breaths. And now let's develop thoughts of goodwill, loving kindness, metta, beginning with ourselves. This is a sincere wish, a wholesome desire for our true and lasting happiness. We can think to ourselves, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free from stress and pain, free from suffering. May I live with a heart and mind unburdened by greed, by aversion, by delusion. May I look after myself with ease. And then we extend our goodwill to our loved ones, our family, our friends, our teachers, mentors, and guides, all those that we love, all those that we respect, all those that we admire. May they also be happy, peaceful, free from stress and pain, free from suffering. May they live with hearts and minds unburdened by greed, by aversion, by delusion. May they look after themselves with ease. And then we extend our goodwill to those that we don't know so well, our acquaintances. May they also be happy, peaceful, free from stress and pain, free from suffering. May they also live with hearts and minds unburdened by greed, by aversion, by delusion. May they look after themselves with ease. And we also extend our metta to those that we have difficulty getting along with, those that we have difficulty respecting or admiring, even those that may call us enemy. May they also be happy, peaceful, free from stress and pain, free from suffering. May they live with hearts and minds unburdened by greed, by aversion, by delusion. May they look after themselves with ease. And it is in this spirit of admirable friendship with all beings that we extend our metta in all directions, in front of us, behind us, infinity, to all beings everywhere. May we all be happy. May we all be peaceful. May we all be free from stress and pain. May we all be free from suffering. May we all live with hearts and minds unburdened by greed, by aversion, by delusion. May we all look after ourselves with ease. And now, with our hearts and minds uplifted with the metta that we have cultivated, let us now turn our attention to the breath. Ardent, alert, mindful, setting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. We sit established in the breath, mindful of the breath coming in, mindful of the breath going out. As you do so, become aware of the quality of breathing. Is the breath long or short, deep or shallow? And then allow the body to breathe in a way that is the most comfortable right now. As the breath comes in, as it goes out, you can become aware of the breath as it moves throughout the whole body. Become aware of the whole body breathing. And establish yourself right there, using the breath to connect body, mind, and heart in this singular activity, giving rise to mental collectedness, concentration. Whatever thoughts may arise, be they be of the past, the future, various fantasies, or reaching out through the senses into the world, bring yourself back to the breath as it comes in and as it goes out. Maintaining your awareness right here and right now. Practicing in this way, we do so in the way the Buddha instructed, to be like a steady flame, and using that light to illuminate our mind and our heart. So let us continue practicing in this way, being mindful of the breath for the remainder of our meditation together. Continue to meditate until you hear the bell.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Subodha, leading the loving kindness meditation. Right now, time for the Dhamma talk. Our speaker today, Sai Maharjan, Dhamma teacher. Basically, he's coming every second Sunday to our temple and giving the Dhamma talk. We really appreciate about your help. And Sai, you can start your Dhamma talk right now.
Good morning, everyone. Dear Venerable Santi and other Venerable Bhantes, the friends in Dhamma. It's always an honor to be here and share some of the Buddha's teaching with you and reflect on Buddha's teaching to make our life meaningful and hopefully reduce the stress that we deal with on daily basis. And people learned Buddha's teaching for different purposes. And I would like to ask you later, so I'll keep my talk short, and I would like to engage in a little discussion. The difference between knowing and not knowing is important, and I want to share a story about, I believe the discussion happened between Venerable Nagasena and in the text it says the King Alexander. So the discussion between these two scholars and the warrior, the king wanted to know what is the difference between knowing and not knowing about good and bad deeds, right? Does that make any difference? And king also asked follow-up question, isn't it better not to know about the karma or your action and the effect, because it's easier to do when you don't know, right? And what happens when you know, like the teaching of the karma? And Venerable Nagasena gave a little explanation with an analogy. Perhaps you might have heard of this before. Imagine you're trying to grab a burning fireball, right? It's a fireball, it's super hot, and you are about to grasp it. And imagine you don't know that the object is very hot. How would you approach, right? If you don't know that it is hot and it's going to hurt you, you're more than likely to grasp without any caution. So you would approach without caution and you just grab with your both hands, and you might have severe burning, severe injury. And now think of the different situation. You know it is hot, but you still have to touch it, and you're tempted to touch it. How would you approach this time? And this time you would approach definitely, I'll ask you later, but you will approach with some caution, right? You know it's hot and you're tempted to touch. You would not use your both hands. Perhaps you might use some kind of protection. You might avoid it completely, or even you touch it, it will be a lot more careful. So the chance of you getting burned is a lot less in compared to the previous one. Now that is I find it useful analogy to understand what is the importance of learning Dhamma, right? When you know Dhamma, the approach to our life, the approach to the way we act, the intention we choose will be a lot more careful. Just like when you have strong desire or hatred or ignorance in our life, the chance of those consequences is very severe because you don't know. And I think of the contemporary examples, those who are unaware about the negative effect of smoking or negative effect of using drugs. When you don't know how it affects your body, you're more than likely to abuse more than when you know, because every day you're conscious, this is hurting, this is not helpful, and hoping that one day you will quit, one day you will stop that behavior. So that awareness of or understanding of Dhamma is very important. And in pursuit of knowing Dhamma, people these days and also during the Buddha's time get bewildered because there are too many teachings, too many ideas, and it's hard to believe who is correct and who is not correct. This happened to this group of people in Buddha's time, and Buddha was passing by, and these kalamas, they are the tribe people who are smart and also have heard many teachers speaking. They met the Buddha and they asked, a lot of people come here, give talks. Perhaps this might be your story too, right? So a lot of people come here and give talks. We're not sure who is correct and who is incorrect. And you might question, like, I don't know. I'm seeking some truth, some knowledge, but it's more confusing. Kalama had the same issue, and Buddha acknowledged it. He said, you have this confusion very rightfully, because it is very hard to decide what is correct and what is incorrect. And Buddha gave a list. I don't know if I will remember all 10. There are 10 points, talking points Buddha mentioned. Just don't believe just based on these 10 factors. And you might have heard of this before. So one of them is ma anusavena. Just because you heard, you don't need to buy it. Because of hearing itself, it can be, as you know, if you're playing the telephone when you were young, one person says one thing, when it passed down to 10 people, the message has been very distorted. And we're talking about Buddha's teaching that is 2,600 years old. So it's a possibility of distortion is pretty high. And if you know the Buddha's Buddhist history, there was a time up until the 1st century. So I'm talking about 600 in between the Buddha's life to 600 years, there was no writing approach. So the Buddha's teaching was all orally memorized. And we relied on those memorization and transferred from one generation to another, 600 years. If you think of like a 50 years for one generation, that's about 12 generations down. And a lot of distortion could have happened, and we still believe a lot of those monks who dedicated their life to preserve Dhamma is accurate, and they cross-reference from different country, and I can get in their route, but we believe that is accurate. At least it gives you option to see if it is accurate. But the Buddha reminded the kalamas, just because you heard it, you don't need to believe, you don't need to buy it. That does not mean you reject it. So I want to be careful. It's not like you're rejecting just because you heard. It's about more being cautious. Ma anusavena means do not accept based on hearing alone. That's the first one. Ma anusavena ma paramparaya. Just because it's tradition. You don't need to buy it. And we can talk a lot on that part. We all have different traditions, the slogans we carry, right? With the nationality, the nationalism, the patriarchism you arise in people, it's all the tradition we try to uphold. And sometimes that could be wrong. And there are things that, in my class I joke about, humans have this part of brain that is very primitive. We are extremely cautious about danger, because at the beginning of human origin, or at early part of the evolution, we had to hunt all day, catch something you can kill and eat, and at night hide so you can preserve energy. That also affected how we digest food, right? So at night we're supposed to preserve energy and digest. Now that is not necessary anymore, because the chance of a hyena attacking you at night is extremely low, but we still have that alertness, right? And that's that part of idea. And we as human, we have some tradition that is obsolete now. Another example I have seen is like this is again probably a story. If you have pet dogs, before they go to sleep, have you seen they go 3 circles, right? It still happens, right? So that is a very ancestral behavior. They watch around themselves to see if there's any fire or any danger before they go to sleep. It's not anymore. They're living in a house. It's super safe. Traditions, that can be obsolete. So Buddha said, just be careful. Because of tradition, you don't want to bring it in. You don't buy it. Ma anusena, ma paramparaya, ma itikiraya, just because hearsay. That is another challenge Buddha made. So there's more. So I'll just make a list. Itikiraya, ma pitika sampadanena. Just because it's in script, you don't believe it. You don't buy it. And ma takka hetu. It's because it's logical, it's reason, in inference base, you don't believe it. And there's other important ones is ma akara parivitakena. Just because you understood after hearing a long chain of thoughts, that is not necessarily true. And ma bhabbarupataya, just because someone is dressed up well, look well, or look gentleman, that is also not need to be believed, right? Ma akara parivitakena. And the other one is ma samano no garu. That person is my teacher, therefore I have to believe it. That is also not necessarily true. So Buddha made a list. I don't know if I made all the 10 lists here, but Buddha made a list of things that you have to be careful. And he gave some autonomy. That's what I want to talk more. He asked, use your intelligence. As humans, you can use your intelligence. If you practice something, you take a behavior, you take a thought that you have, you take an emotion that you're feeling, take one of those and you ask yourself, is this going to be hurtful to me or someone else? Is this going to damage someone's well-being? Now that we call akusala, right? The unwholesome practice. It's a very simple question you ask. Whatever I'm doing, whether it is doing charity or stealing, right? Whether you are saving life or killing others. Before you even talk about religion, ask yourself, am I doing something that's hurtful to myself or others? And if the answer is yes, you're hurting somebody, you're hurting yourself, that is considered unwholesome. That's one criterion you can use to assess your own action. That's the first one. And the second one is if this action has some kind of negative consequences, right? It's a wrong or sawajja, that means there is a wrongdoing in it. And you ask that question, is my action a wrongdoing? And if the answer is yes, you identify that is a problematic. That's a problem behavior or thought or your emotions. And the other one, that's a very important one, is almost like a surveying, if this particular behavior is criticized by scholars. The wise people criticize killing, hurting, or stealing, or lying, or betraying. Are those behaviors criticized by scholars and wise people? If the answer is yes, you put them into akusala or unwholesome deed. And when you engage in this behavior, how is your life? Do you feel happy? Do you feel inside peace? Do you enjoy those behaviors? Or no, you always have to be extra cautious that someone is going to come and retaliate. And if that is the case, then you know that is unwholesome. So those few criteria will give you your own self-assessment, right? If I'm doing something that is wholesome or unwholesome, you do not need a scholar. You do not need to believe in any of the other sources. And the other last part I want to add in that sutta is helping you to identify. And then Buddha goes on a little more detail about, now look at the desires that you may have, look at the hateful thoughts you may have, and look at the ignorance that we may have. Those factors will be assessed in each of those. And some people believe in rebirth, right? You think of like what happens after life, but there are also time people do not believe in one. Does that mean you are not qualified to learn the Dhamma? Not necessarily true. And the Kalama Sutta explains very well, if there are 4 types of assurance. Once you know how to assess yourself, if you believe in rebirth, if you believe in life after death, and that means that the karma is functioning and you continue to live this life, at some point your life ends and there is another beginning of the new start of a life. And if you believe in that, you can reassure yourself, well, if there is a life after this, I have done things that is wholesome. So I can be assured that I will not suffer in next life. I will be in a much better life condition, whether it is human or and we believe in heavens, right? You might be in a better place. and somebody who does not believe in rebirth. You can still assure yourself, thinking, if there is no life after this, so what? This life will be peaceful. This life will be with less threat, right? You will continue to live meaningfully as long as this life lasts. So that would be another way to assure yourself, my action is wholesome, doesn't hurt anybody. And what if there is a consequence of good karma, right? Somebody who, or bad karma, somebody who does wrong thing and they are followed by wrong karma. You can again reassure yourself, well, if that is the case, I have purified myself. I have chosen the action that is not leading to give more negative consequences. And those who don't believe in that, no, there is no return to your bad deeds, and then you're still good, because you don't need to worry about the confusion. And that's what I like in Buddhism. So this for the assurance. Buddha gives so much power to each individual to examine, how do you choose to live life? And coming back to the very early story I shared, Bhante Nagasena's explanation. A lot of people choose not to know what is good and what is bad, to learn Dhamma, because that makes people anxious. Once you know, now you have to act on it. And that is difficult, because it's better to live as you are living and not worry about not assessing how you've done. Unfortunately, that will just add up, right? It continue to add up. And if you really follow the Buddha's teaching, our attempt should be going from darkness to brightness. There's another sutta called Tamo Jyoti Parayana. So we choose, if you're born in a good life, you're healthy life, you have a good physical and mental well-being, you have that status, you're born in a brightness. But people choose to go from brightness to darkness. That means they choose the action that will deteriorate whatever condition they're born in. But our attempt should be to move from darkness to brightness. So tamo is darkness to brightness, and it's up to us, right? You cannot blame the Buddha's teaching. You cannot blame Bhantes. So I'm freeing Bhantes from all the possible responsibilities. It's up to us individually. We're responsible, and even the Buddha himself, my favorite quote from his teaching is like, "Tumhi kichang atapang akhataro tathagata." You yourself have to take on the responsibilities or take actions. I only give you the direction. Just like the example I might have shared frequently, you get a direction from here to Arizona. You got the map, you got the navigation directions and all the instruction you need. You yourself have to take the journey, because no one else will take on that. And that is where we have little more responsibility than in other religion. But Buddhism asks to examine our behaviors, choose that will, not just for the short-term gain. It's more for long-term peace. And if you always wonder, am I getting any benefit from learning this Dhamma? Use the Dhamma as a mirror. That's another analogy in Buddhism. When you look at the Dhamma, your knowledge, your behavior, how do you see yourself? Do you see more peace, or do you see more distress? And if you see more distress, perhaps the Dhamma is not correct for you. And more than likely, perhaps you got the Dhamma from the wrong side of it, right? There's another analogy. I'm giving a lot of analogy. There's an analogy of snake, right? When you see a snake, if you want to carefully grasp or remove it, you don't want to grasp it from the tail. And that happened to even monks, Bhantes. There are Bhantes who may have grasped the Dhamma from the wrong side. A lot of lay people may have grasped the Dhamma from the wrong side. And those are the individuals who go after fame, go after popularity, go after material gaining, go after who knows what. And that is the wrong grasp of the Dhamma. And if you really want to be protected by and protected in the Dhamma, you need to grasp it on the right side. And that's where the constant examining, learning the Dhamma, reading helps. And that's how you know I have grasped the Dhamma from the right side, it has made my life better, and I live peacefully today than yesterday. And that should be the journey. So with that, I will end my little talk on the Buddha's teaching, and I would love to hear any questions or comments or thoughts from you. Thank you. Yes, sir. And your name? What's your name?
My name is Dick.
Dick.
D-U-C.
Dick. Yes, Dick.
So you say that we should believe in ourselves to accept what is the wrong and what is the right. Right. And how do we know that what is the wrong and the right? Because, for example, if we think that this is the right thing, but actually it's still hurt people by ourselves, but we still do not see it. So how do we know that if we just believe only by our trust?
Well, I think I'll correct myself. Not the believing part, but examining. So it's not believing you're right, but you're examining whether am I right or wrong, right? And it can go back to, like, if this helps, things that we do falls within 5 precepts, right? If you think of precepts, let's say you're doing something that's hurtful to yourself or hurtful to somebody. Now, that by nature, you know hurting is not good. If you believe that, oh, hurting is okay, now you're fooling yourself by changing how really it feels, right? If you hurt somebody and you believe that is okay, that's a wrong belief. But if you hurt somebody, and the other way to do is to flip it. How would you feel if somebody's doing the same action on you? How would you take that? And if you feel like, no, that I don't feel pleasant, I don't like that happening, that gives you a kind of a flip side, standing in someone else's shoes gives you a flip side. Oh, I don't like that somebody does to me. And you can now go back and think, oh, I've been doing that to others. So definitely they are not feel good. So that's the one way. So it's not believing, it's more like a examining. Examine yourself. I'm just using the hurting part, but it could be lying, right? You lie, somebody deceive, give you misinformation, give you misdirection, and you think, oh, that's good because I don't see any wrong. And one way to do it is like, now let's flip it. Let someone else do the same thing unto you. How does that feel? And if you immediately feel like, no, I don't want that, that's hypocrisy, right? I don't want that to me, but I'll keep doing to others because I think that is good for them. That's a hypocrisy. So you flip it and you see, if somebody deceives me, I don't think I'll appreciate that. And you can think, okay, if I'm doing the same to others, I don't think that is gonna fly. That's helpful. So that's one way to examine if my actions are in the right direction. And that's a what do you call it, the universal or gold standard for examining any behavior. And you can also ask, that's why the second part is this behavior accepted by wise and scholars? That's where you can check. And if you are not sure, something like as simple as hurting is very clear. That is not pleasant. But some of the things that we do is so subtle, it's hard to tell if I'm doing it right. That's why you go for ask. I can ask monks, you can ask scholars, you can ask friends, kind of getting a gauge. Am I in the right direction? And if you see a lot of people say, no, that's gonna, in the long run, you're not gonna be happy, and okay, a lot of people that I trust seem to reject what I think is good. That's another way to change, or now, okay, let me see what can I do. So hopefully that does that help too? Okay. Anand, I saw your hand earlier.
Yes, I have a question because I love history a lot, and I know the King Milinda Panya. This was a very important Greek king that converted to Buddhism. So I just wanted to ask you, the talk between Nagasena and King Menander, was that mostly about knowing and not knowing, or what would you say the main idea in the dialogue was?
It's a later addition to the Tripitaka. the last collection, and in Myanmar, I think also in Thailand, they accept Milinda Panna, or the question of King Milinda, as a part of Tripitaka in Khuddaka Nikaya. But the book has more than just knowing and not knowing. King Milinda was, and they sometimes interpret he was Alexander. So he was non-Buddhist, and he was a very good debater. So he wanted to defeat Bante Nagasena, and that's why he invited. The whole plan was to defeat, and that's almost like, not like the debate you see these days on TV. It's more like based on fact, logic, reasoning, and to prove that you are much better than the other person. So King was trying to prove that he's better at debate, but in that journey, he learned a lot about Buddhism. He learned about impermanence, he learned about the causality. So by questioning, it was more than just knowing and not knowing. It's more like exploring what Buddhism is. And he challenged a lot, and he asked for many ways to understand. So it's a good read for anybody. There's a lot of translation if you get a chance. So there's more than just knowing and not knowing. There's different dialogues. Yes. 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 And Ben? Yes, Ben.
Thank you very much for your talk. So a question for everybody. When you think about all of your interactions with lay people, what's the most common way that you've seen a lay person grasp the Dhamma from the wrong side, so that we cannot do that? What have you seen?
Well, I'm not a monk, but I was monk for 16 years, so I can share some of that. A lot of the time that people grasp Dhamma from the wrong side, it's almost, Bantes can give me or correct me if they have a different answer, is that it's almost like a investment approach. So if you know what I mean, there's a ROI. I learned that recently, return on investment, right? So the people follow, not all. There are people who grasp it wrongly. It almost seems like it's a return on investment. For example, if you donate, you're expecting something in return, which is like a fame, praise, now I might not be invited again, but I'll tell you. But so having the labels of your name tags and all the which is not bad, and if it is done with a good heart, let's say you donated, you contribute, and Bantes want to acknowledge, that's a different story. But if your sole purpose to have that name plaque on the board, that's a very different story, right? Appreciation versus like a demanding, it's a very different story. That's one wrong grasping, right? It's almost like investment. If I give you, you treat me like royalty. That's a wrong way of getting Dhamma, in terms of giving. And also like a cherry picking. Sometimes people take Dhamma as a cherry pick. And I don't know if that is the right analogy. You only pick that appeals you, and you ignore that doesn't appeal you. For example, here's a funny story. This happened in Nepal or somewhere in Sri Lanka. When you give 5 precepts, I don't see much here, but when you observe 5 precepts, the lay people have to say it out loud in return. Have you seen that? Bantes recite 5 precepts, and you have to repeat back. And there was one person, he would not repeat the last one. Right? He would repeat all of the 4 very loud, and the last one is very obvious, he wouldn't repeat it. If you don't know, that one is, I will abstain from taking alcohol and intoxicant stuff, right? He would not repeat, very honest person. And one day monk asked, why wouldn't you repeat that? Oh, that I can't do it, so I'll keep the rest. I'll keep the 4, so that one, it's not happening. And he's trying to protect the second one. He didn't want to lie, but he didn't want to take the precept. So that's cherry picking. And I have a story. If you just violate one, that will lead to violate all of them. I'll leave that for later. But when you do that, you only choose what appeals you and ignore. That is like, perhaps that's the most important one. Perhaps that's what you need to be okay getting out of your comfort zone and learn that part, right? And being in the United States, I have been sometimes not criticized, but like tapped and kind of given people nudged me, don't talk too much about impermanence. Don't talk about change in this country. People don't like it. Like, it doesn't matter I talk or not. It's happening, right? If I don't tell you, we're all gonna die. It doesn't matter I tell or not. It is happening. So that's another problem. Like when you feel like I don't want to talk, that's too sensitive. That's too much for me. So that's like you choosing certain teaching and pushing away certain. That could be another wrong grasp. If it is a practice, it should be practiced in a very good level. And the other one is one last. There's more. I can tell more. But the other one is like a surface level practice, like in a very surface level practice. People, those who I think I shared the story last time. I just mentioned to Bhante, Navanna Rupena Naro Sujano. People, they appear very calm and peaceful. There was this lady who was known as a very peaceful lady, and her worker wanted to test her. This, I shared this story some time ago. And this worker, is she really peaceful, or just like everybody's doing their job, that's why she's peaceful? So this lady came to work late, and the peaceful lady lost her cool, right? She lost it a couple of times, and she even kicked her out. A lot happened. So when you are not tested, you may appear calm. You may appear good, patient, morally sound person. But when you are tested, that's when you start seeing your weaknesses. And people don't always get tested on that. And so in Pali we call, there's a suppressed or dormant defilements, right? They don't always come out. It's almost like you study, if you have heard of genes, of genetic inheritance, we have some active genes and some of dormant genes, right? They're not active until, let's say somebody has alcohol genes in them. It's not turned on or activated until they find a bunch of friends who are in the same setting. So same thing with our defilements. Some of them are very silent, quiet, dormant, sleeping, but when you're tested, that's when you're not cool, you're not patient, you're not kind. So that's why you don't want to be on a surface level. You want to practice what really is your challenge, right? If you have not, like the other, I've heard people like that, I don't want to donate, I just want to learn Dhamma, I just want to meditate. Well, again, that's cherry picking. You're not coming out in a way that helps you. You're only choosing what helps you. So those are some, there are many you can think of now, right? If you are not being sincerely yourself, trying to fully understand Dhamma as it is laid, and only choosing some and only present in a pleasant way and never show your weaknesses, those are where you didn't understand Dharma yet, and you want to expose and seek help for that what is not comfortable, seek help for what's really happening, and then apply. So I will let Bhantes and other friends share. Subodha, you want to add something?
You and I have apparently had similar experiences sharing Dhamma. One thing I'll add is that, this mostly pertains to Westerners that I've interacted with. And it's this kind of underlying assumption or belief or, let's say, mode of practice, where some people tend to think that meditation alone is the entirety of being a Buddhist, of adopting Buddhism, and then they wonder why their life doesn't miraculously change because they do something 20 minutes in the morning. And I think that we can have this tendency to miss what the Buddha was sharing, which is an entire life path, something that affects what you think, what you say, and what you do. It's something that's all the time, not just when you're on the cushion, not just when you're at the temple, but something that you carry on with you in every interaction. And that can get overlooked. And so, like Sai was saying, you have people who don't think about their practice beyond the meditation. And so there isn't a lot of thinking about what it means to be generous, what it means to be virtuous, what it means to interact and then reflect on those actions and to determine what is skillful and unskillful. You know, I think one of the damaging things we've had in the West is how we tend to interpret the Kalama Sutta, where we tend to think of it as, you know, this kind of blank check where we can just follow our intuition, follow our gut, and follow our own internal wisdom. But the fact of the matter is that those of us in our day-to-day lives don't really have good intuitions and are pretty low on wisdom. So it means that when we find a path that seems worth developing, and we find admirable friends on the path worth emulating, then we actually have to do the work of doing that. And what that means is, the way my teacher often phrases it, is that we commit and we reflect. So that means that we actually put the practice into action. We actually do work on generosity. We do work on virtue. We do work on our conduct, what we think, what we say, what we do. We do things like follow precepts. And then, when we've truly committed to the practice, then we can reflect on the practice and see how it's changed our lives. But if you just think it's going to happen magically because you were following the breath for 20 minutes, it doesn't work that way, right? So the practice is beyond the cushion. It's about how we live our life every step. That's why we call it a path, right? So I think that's what often gets overlooked, is reducing the path to one particular activity and not making it every activity that we do in every moment. So that would be my contribution.
Thank you, Subodh. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's very Western way of taking. And when I think of how Buddhism is taught, Buddha taught his teaching, it's similar to what you hear of Ayurveda. Anybody heard of that? Ayurveda, mm-hmm. It's an Eastern medicine science, right? The term is very different. It means Ayurveda means the science of life. So we don't call medicine, it's not called medicine or study of illness, it's called the science of Ayu, which means longevity, the science of longevity. And when you really look into some of those Eastern approach to health, it's not extracting what works the most from the ingredient. Let me give you an example. If I remember when we get injured, and if there is some kind of infection, and I remember we did this treatment to a young monk in Pirivena. We just take turmeric, right, the raw, the root, turmeric root, and you smash it. You pack it in a little bit of foil, and you heat it, and let it cool, and you wrap it around the infection, and tie it for a few days. So turmeric has an anti-inflammation part. I don't know much more than that, but what I'm trying to tell you is, if you give the same turmeric to the Westerners, or the Western approach is, what is that particular ingredient in turmeric that helps anti-inflammation? Not the whole root, that's too much. So you take what is the very much, am I making sense? Right? You take the exact ingredient that works and you dump the rest. Now that's what is happening to Buddhism. You look at the Buddhism as a full picture, and what is the most appealing, like Subodh mentioned, meditation. And I'm in psychology. People have done many research. Mindfulness helps. Kabat-Zinn, he started using mindfulness for stress, people with the chronic stress, chronic pain. It worked. Yes, there is benefit in practicing. It could be a good start. But if you really want to transform your life, not just get over your knee pain, but you really want to transform your life, then you need to eat the whole turmeric. Not turmeric, but you need to eat the whole, take as the whole, rather than taking a piece of it. So mindfulness is one of 8. If you know the 8 Noble Path, it's just one of 8 Noble Path, and it's not even all of it. Out of 8, this is 1, and out of 1, people only take a small piece of it, breathing. That goes beyond breathing. And if you continue to practice, you will be lost, because within that one path, you need to have done other pieces as well, right? You're trying to make peace with your mind, but you never practice loving kindness. That's not going to work. You're trying to learn how to let go. That's like one part of meditation. You're sitting there, there is pain, there is a strong urge, strong desire come to your mind, and you're supposed to be mindful of that and constantly reflect, letting it go. I have a strong urge, letting it go. But you have never practiced generosity. That ain't gonna happen. You cannot let go. You will be angry. You will be so aversive. Why is it still there? I've been sitting here for 20 minutes, 1 hour, why doesn't it go away? Well, that has to do with you have practiced generosity, you have practiced letting go, you have practiced how to appease other components. So, just to complement what Subodha mentioned, Buddhism is like it's a package. You cannot just choose small piece, and if you do that, that's a wrong grasp. Coming back to Ben's question, it's a wrong grasp. And you don't need to learn everything and do everything. Start from where you feel comfortable. And like I was joking earlier, like if you feel uncomfortable with the 5th precept, perhaps think about it. Maybe that's what you need to work on, right? And if you feel uncomfortable practicing loving kindness, perhaps that's where you should start. It's exposure therapy, right? You start where you don't like the most. So hopefully that helps. Any other question or thoughts? Yes, Anand.
Since you mentioned the Kabat-Zinn, there's like a group of doctors that they follow something they call secular Buddhism, where they like mindfulness, they like letting go of the Four Noble Truths, but they say we don't really got to think about rebirth, we don't really got to think about the devas, things like that. What do you think? Do you think this is like a good way to teach Buddhism? Or do you think it misses a lot of the spiritual or a lot of the other spiritual things of the faith?
But those are expected. Those kind of groups are expected in any time. And even the Buddha's time, his disciples started to team up and started to develop small cults, right? We are so and so, we like this and that. And some of them are good ones, good groups, like those who really practiced renunciation, they team up with Mahakashyapa. Those who really practiced extrasensory perception meditation, they team up with Bhante Moggallana. Right? There were groups, and those who are really analytical, they team up with Bhante Kaccayana. So there were groups, but they never left the root. They still had their connection to the Buddha. But there are also some who wanted to separate, like Devadatta. He wanted to separate a group of monks from the Buddha. Now that's a problem, because now you're rejecting the root, because you have a better plan or different plan. And about those groups, I had a conversation with a group in Texas. This is when I was monk. We connected, and this one particular individual recommended that I should read these 15 suttas from the Buddha's teaching, and they were very adamant that is Buddhism, and that everybody must read that 15 because that is the core teaching. There is nothing beyond. Everybody must read it. First, I was like, yeah, thank you, I'll take a look at it. They went beyond that. The person went beyond, no, I'm telling you, let me give you the list. That's when I had to explain, how about I give you 20 suttas that I think is must. Right? You must read them, because those are must for Buddhism. If you want to understand Buddhism, those 20 are must. And I have another friend who says the other 30 is must. How about now? So what happened? We all come up with our set of suttas. This is must, this is must. It's just like there's a Jachanda Sutta in, I think in Anguttara Nikaya, in the numerical teaching. When you touch the elephant and you're birth blind, you're going to start fighting. No, elephant is like a wall. It's flat. The one who touched the belly, because they've never seen elephant. And the other group who touched the tail said, no, it's like a broom. And the other people who touched the legs said, it's like a pillar. What you guys talking about? And they get into conflict. Idameva satyam mogamanyam. I am correct, the rest of you are wrong. That happened during the Buddha's time. And those kind of secular, isolation, developing cult, and I might be wrong, but there are different motives for them. Like, if you are seeking popularity, like I said, you got the Dhamma from the wrong side. You're seeking popularity, you're seeking financial gain, it's a monetary purpose, more like influential individuals, then you lost the essence of teaching. Yeah, you have respect, right? You have respect for the Buddha, but you take it to the way you want it rather than the way it is. So that is a problem. And coming back to what Subodha mentioned, you're not getting the most out of it, you're getting some out of it. And those individuals, what I really bothers me the most is when people interpret the Dhamma the way they want it. That bothers me. My name used to be Dhammapala. That means the protector of the Dhamma. Maybe that's why I get a little, it's the protector of the Dhamma. So I really get a little disturbed when people interpret Dhamma the way they want. And I would challenge, doesn't matter who the person is, monk, not monk, scholar, I would challenge. Because I've done my homework in Buddhism. So I can tell you, when you are wrong, you're wrong. Right? I can be very sure, I can give you the evidence to show that is incorrect. Because that's one way to preserve the Buddha's teaching, right? And when I read certain section, even translation or some textbook about meditation, I have seen, and that's where I feel like that is your interpretation. I'm okay with that. You can interpret the way you want, but don't claim that is Buddha's teaching. You have to be very careful. If that is your interpretation, own it. Don't attribute that to the Buddha. That's wrong. That is incorrect. And that's why it's very important that, like Subodha mentioned, you reflect on your actions, reflect on your deeds. And when you read those texts, and coming back to Kalama, the Buddha clearly mentioned, you don't accept just because so-and-so said it, so-and-so are scholars, so-and-so are my teacher, so-and-so look very appealing. Those are not a viable reason to accept as Buddha's teaching. Even this, I don't know if I should stop, Bhante, but in another sutta, in Parinibbana Sutta, this is right before Buddha's final passing away. He was in his sick bed and he was about to depart from this world. And Buddha gave a very important advice called Mahapadesa. And the Upadesa was very simple. You hear something, you read something, you learn something from somebody, and they claim, I learned this from the Buddha. I learned this from so-and-so's student who was the Buddha's student, right? Just because they said it, you don't reject or you don't accept. Your job is to take that information, go to the sutta, go to the discipline and the teaching, compare and contrast. And if you find any anomaly, if you find any controversial ideas there, you just simply reject it. You just tell, oh, they learned it wrong. And if there is accordingly, then you say, oh yeah, the person has learned it correctly. So there's no need to quarrel about it, but be definitely careful. And that's why, it's coming back to why I started this talk, is we are responsible. We are given that responsibility to be cautious and take them and not accept it right away. Just be careful. And I like Duke's question, if I'm doing something right and I believe that is right, let me go a little step further and I can flip the story. I can talk to somebody and come to conclusion, because once you do that homework, I don't think you will be wrong all the time. So I don't even remember why I started the whole explanation there, but thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any time right now. That's why we have to stop. So, thank you again for this very nice Dhamma talk. And we will chant the page 4 and page 10. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami,
Sangham saranam gacchami. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Evil impassions are inexhaustible. I vow to save them all. Dhamma gates are limitless. I vow to study them all. Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain it. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearlessly. May the grieving shed all grief, and the sick find health to live. Thank you for everybody. Few announcement. Next Sunday, our speaker is going to be a Subodha. Subodha is going to be next Sunday. Please come and join. Few announcement. We can celebrate somebody's birthday today. So we have cake and somebody's birthday. Actually, the Venerable Panyaloka's birthday, I don't know, yesterday or day before yesterday. I have no idea. But we are celebrating almost 1 week right now. Yesterday also we have one celebration. So today also we have cake. And we wish him the happy birthday. That's it right now again. So by the power of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, you all be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.